Good evening and welcome to this edition of History and Highballs. We're so glad that you're joining us for this evening's program, History and Highballs, celebrating a Victorian Christmas with Corners Folly. My name is Stacy and I handle adult education here at the North Carolina Museum of History. So anytime that you sign up for one of these History and Highballs programs, you and I get to virtually spend the evening together listening to some incredible stories about North Carolina places and people and what makes our state so special. Tonight's program is just one of many exciting virtual offerings available through MOH. So if you'd like to learn more about our initiatives, we invite you to head over to the museum's website at ncmuseumofhistory.org. This is also where you can learn about shopping in our wonderful museum shop, which is currently filled to the brim with all kinds of holiday goodies. And it's also where you can learn more about becoming an associates member. Our associates and foundation provide crucial funding and support to the museum, which in addition to many other things, helps make programming like this evening's event possible. We would like to thank those of you who donated funds towards this evening's program. We continue to do our best to keep our programs free to attend, but there are costs associated with keeping our series going, and we just continue to be so appreciative of your generous support of the museum. A few quick housekeeping items for this evening. We ask that you please keep your mics muted throughout the entirety of the program, and to please type any questions that you have for our guest speaker into the chat function located at the bottom center of your screen. At the end of the program, our adult programs intern, Bobby, will ask the speaker as many of your questions as time allows. So it's my honor to introduce this evening's speaker, Susanna Ritz. Susanna is the Operations and Programs Manager for Corners Folly, a circa 1880 house museum built by artist and interior designer Jewel Corner. Did I say that right, Susanna?
It's confusing. It's actually Kerner.
Kerner, okay. Susanna holds a BA in art history from Salem College and an MA in arts administration from the University of New Orleans. After teaching visual arts exploration in New Orleans charter schools through KidSmart, an arts integration nonprofit, she worked in museum education at the Ogden Museum of Southern Art, as a security guard at the Southeastern Center for Contemporary Art, and in collections at the Museum of Storytelling and Engagement in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, before landing her role at Corners Folly in 2018, where she is involved in everything from wildlife capture and release to capital campaign fundraising. A very warm welcome to you, Susanna. Thanks for being with us tonight.
Thank you so much, Stacy and Bobby and everybody else for joining me tonight. I'm really excited to share with you some of the history of Kerner's Folly and some of the traditions that they celebrated back in the olden days. All right, if you'll bear with me, this is my first presentation. I am sharing my screen. Can everyone see me? My presentation, we're good?
That looks perfect. Yep.
Good. Thank you so much. Cece's so sweet. All right. So we will be celebrating a Victorian Christmas this evening. I hope everybody's got their beverage that they're enjoying. If anyone tried the eggnog recipe or is drinking eggnog, I'm especially happy for you tonight. All right. So we are going to go ahead and get started with a lovely view of Kerner's Folly in the wintertime. It's located on Main Street in Kernersville, right off 40. So if you're traveling in the Piedmont Triad, we would love to see you. We are a lot of fun. We have a lot of interesting things going on. And this time of year, we have a whole lot of Christmas. But before we get to that, we're going to start with a little bit of history. Here we have a self-portrait of Jewel Kerner over here on the left. He was the grandson of Joseph Kerner, who is considered to be the founder of Kernersville. And he built the whimsical home beginning in 1878, completing it in 1880. He began his career as an artist by studying painting and photography, eventually using his skills in service to the Blackwell Tobacco Company, creating one of the first outdoor advertising campaigns in the nation, creating the iconic Durham Bull advertisements for their new rolling tobacco. And you can see here on the right a picture of Jewel propped up next to one of his outdoor advertisements. All right. Eventually, he transitioned to his true passion, which was interior design. And he built this structure to serve as his bachelor living quarters, studio, and living catalog for his design services, resulting in an extreme variety in window door sizes and shapes, elaborate mantels and millwork, ceiling frescoes, and playful, highly ornamented furnishings. Legend has it that the name of his creation came from a cousin who remarked as he passed by the strange looking structure rising along Main Street, "That building will be Jewel Kerner's folly." He probably meant it as an insult, meaning a foolish act, but folly can also mean in architectural terms a costly ornamental building with no practical purpose. Jewel, however, was delighted by the derisive comment and wore it as a badge of honor, even tiling the home's name on the front porch, as we see here. On the left is an original advertisement for Jewel's business, the Reuben Rink Decorating and House Furnishing Company. He adopted the name Reuben Rink as a sort of nom de plume. And on the right, you can see the Reuben Rink crew, Jewel seated in front, which involves several of his family members. Here is a recolored image of Jewel's original second floor studio, which evolved into the reception room, as we will see later. You can view Jewel's landscape and still life paintings along the walls, a classical Greek-inspired frieze mural, and many interesting objects and plants. Not long after the Folly was built, Jewel married Polly Alice Maston of Salem, and the couple had 2 children, Gilmer, born in 1885, and Doré, born in 1887. The house underwent a total transformation, going from 11 rooms to 22 rooms in order to make it more family friendly. Notably, the original open central carriageway was closed in, and the stables, which were on the first floor of the south side of the house, were relocated across the street. Jewel created cozy child-sized rooms for Gilmer and Doré. He also converted his 3rd floor billiards room into Cupid's Park Theater, thought to be among the first private little theaters in the country, for his wife, Polly Alice, who adored the dramatic arts. And she even started a program for local children, and they presented shows regularly for the community. Later on, after he became a family man, his studio was transformed into the elegant reception room. And here we can see a number of exotic animal rugs, intriguing furniture, and additional murals and plaster medallions on the ceiling. Kerner's Folly became a hub of activity and hospitality as the children hosted their friends after their studies were complete, and the house was regularly open for parties, performances, and gatherings of all kinds. Here on the left, we see Gilmer and Doré with their pet raccoon, Bob, who was such a beloved family member, he was actually preserved via taxidermy upon his passing. We also see Gilmer here in the middle. He is dressed as Napoleon for one of the family's many productions. And we also see Doré as a young lady. All right, the holidays were a very special time at the Folly. Christmas had been celebrated in various ways for centuries, but it was not until the late 1800s that our modern idea of Christmas became widespread. In 1870, President Grant declared Christmas a federal holiday, cementing its place in American culture. Many of these traditions were brought from the old world to the new. And as Jewel's grandfather hailed from the Black Forest region of Germany, his family was especially quick to embrace the celebrations. Like the Kerner family's roots, modern decorated Christmas trees can be traced to Germany. There is a lot of speculation surrounding the exact origin of the Christmas tree. Some believe that the earliest evergreen trees were brought into homes to celebrate the winter solstice as a reminder that warmer times would come. Others believe the reformist Martin Luther was the first to decorate the tree with candles, inspired by stars shining through the leaves of the evergreens. Regardless of its roots, in Germany, Christmas trees were common and often decorated with fruit, flowers, and gingerbread shapes. By the late 1880s, Germany experienced extensive deforestation due to the rising popularity of Christmas trees. As a result, inventors made the first artificial Christmas tree, known as feather trees. Craftsmen dyed goose feathers green and attached them to sticks to imitate local pines. This precedent led to the eventual creation of the artificial trees we know today. In 1848, Queen Victoria, the ultimate trendsetter for Great Britain as well as America, decorated her first Christmas tree with her husband, Prince Albert, and their children, helping to spark the mass appeal of the practice. By the late 19th century, Christmas trees were very popular in America. Trees were decorated with homemade ornaments, as well as candies, fruits, nuts, and other sweets. Dyed popcorn and berries were strung into garlands and added to the decorations. Victorian ornaments also included paper and fabric horns of plenty, as we see on the left, as well as modern inventions like airships, and of course, angels, considered symbols of purity and playful, chaste love. With the addition of festive Christmas trees, Americans now had a holiday focal point in their homes. People began hanging small presents on the tree. However, over time, as Christmas presents grew larger and more expensive, they began to lay them underneath the tree. Before the 1800s, gift giving during the holiday season was modest. However, with technological advances, Americans had unprecedented leisure time and spending money for newly manufactured goods. Consumerism and commercialism across the nation led to an increase in store-bought presents, and the custom of gift exchange grew. Department stores began advertising with larger window displays and even created special holiday hours. Soon, Christmas shopping became part of the economy. While families could give handmade presents, people could now also purchase mass-produced gifts, such as dolls, stuffed toys, like a teddy bear, and wooden toys, like trains and cars. Gift giving among Americans, particularly children, was supported by the representation of the man himself, Santa Claus. He was also developed from a European legend of Kris Kringle and St. Nicholas and represented a jolly, generous gift giver. This version of Old St. Nick became especially popularized with the help of Clement C. Moore's 1822 poem, A Visit from St. Nicholas. This 1881 illustration by Thomas Nast was inspired by Moore's poem and appeared in the January 1, 1881 issue of Harper's Weekly, helping the nation visualize Santa as we know him today. Over the years, the Kerner family exchanged many beautiful, thoughtful gifts with one another, including the ones we see here. On the left is a doll that Doré received as a young girl, and she named her Medora after her favorite aunt. Funny story about Medora, she lives in Doré's bedroom, and Doré's granddaughter comes and gets her a couple times a year to go get her hair done and her outfit changed. So Medora was looking especially nice this past year. On the right, we see a book that Doré received from her friend Leslie in 1908. It's called Christmas Cheer. It goes through the traditions of Christmas, the decorations, how wonderful it is to be with family, and just the joy of the season. Doré received the book, The Poetical Words of Alfred Tennyson, from her cousins Kathleen, Philip, and Maddie Lee Kerner for Christmas in 1904. On the right, the leather-bound selected poems of Lord Byron was a gift from Doré to her father Jewel at Christmas in 1905. Doré received these black leather boots with white buttons as a young girl for Christmas, which were perfect for the cold winter months. Christmas cards became the ideal gifts for friends and relatives. The first Christmas card was created in 1843 by Sir Henry Cole in the UK that coincided with the formation of the penny post, making it very cheap to send messages. Louis Prang, a printmaker, also known as the father of the American Christmas card, saw a market opportunity for this type of festive communication in America. In 1874, he began creating lithographed Christmas cards at his factory in Boston. Advances in printing technology allowed people to purchase cards easily and affordably. Early Christmas cards usually contained images of flowers and animals and collecting and displaying greeting cards on mantles and tables, even hanging them from the walls, became a popular seasonal pastime. In 1915, the Hall Brothers Company, which later changed its name to Hallmark, printed the first 4x6 folded cards inserted into an envelope, which was a response to the desire of many to write a longer greeting than would fit on the postcard style Christmas cards that had been used previously. In his 1914 diary, Gilmer's Christmas Day entry remarks that the weather was cold and disagreeable. However, he said on a more cheerful note, he received a great many cards from friends. So here we see the family, the Kerner family, when the kids are a bit older, standing in the snow outside of the Folly. And this photo is dated 1915. You can tell by the caption that they have already started referring to it as the Folly, as we do as well. These are some of the original Christmas cards that were sent to the Kerner family. I really love this poinsettia one. That became a very popular flower for Christmas cards, and it still is today. A very Merry Christmas. That's what I'm wishing you, and that we'll see each other more often than we do. And the inscription says, I hope the new year has many good things in store for you. And I believe this is from Mrs. Clay M. Whitsett. May not be right on that one. You can see it's addressed to Mrs. Gilmer Kerner in Kernersville, NC. On the right, we have another Christmas card celebrating Christmas cheer. This one is more of a postcard, whereas we see the one on the left is a letter. So many Christmas cards were received during this time, and a lot of them are simply signed by a friend, like this one on the left from Corey Stone. A Merry Christmas. I wish you not the Christmas cheer that with time's passing fades away, but that which lasts from year to year and gains new luster with each day. This one on the right, happiest greetings for Christmas. This one is actually from an excerpt from a poem by James Lowell called The Vision of Sir Landfall. As we see, even today, people are celebrating Christmas and New Year's kind of together. So a Happy New Year with some holly berries on the left. This object in the middle, I believe, dates from 1906 and was an early sort of Advent calendar. It was called a Christmas calendar, but it really counted down the days to Christmas and must have been really great fun for the kids. We have some Christmas wishes and poinsettias once again. And now we are to food and drink, my favorite part. Another popular tradition that the Kerners enjoyed was a special meal for Christmas. In his 1912 diary, Gilmer wrote that they had a beautiful, clear, cold Christmas day, and that they began the classic holiday beverage, eggnog. Gilmer writes, Papa just received an order of fine Christmas liquor, and we made eggnog first thing. Then he and I went after oysters. Mr. Milch came down and took dinner together. We had a jolly day together. And he's referring to Caesar Milch, who was Jules' friend from art school, who also lived at the Folly with the family and was the in-house muralist for all of the Kerner's Folly designs, as well as for all of Jules' projects that he made for other clients. On the right, we see a really special cup. It's best to keep that eggnog in a tiny cup if you can, especially a strong one like this. This is actually inscribed Gilmer Kerner and Kernersville and was purchased at the World's Fair in, I believe, 1894. That's a cool little Christmassy cup for you. The Kerners, like many North Carolinians, enjoyed oysters as a Christmas dish. In 1897, an ideal Christmas dinner menu was published in the Ladies' Home Journal, a popular magazine for middle to upper class Americans like the Kerners. They had listed in this menu oysters on the half shell, clear soup, custard and spinach blocks, which I think is like a cup, celery, deviled spaghetti, sweet potato croquettes, roasted turkey, chestnut stuffing, ginger sherbet, um, my personal favorite, peas served in turnip cups, which is the top left image I was able to dig up, cheese balls, lettuce salad, toasted crackers, plum pudding with hard sauce, coffee, bonbons, and almonds. Sounds pretty delicious. Another important tradition for the Kerner family was going to church. In the Piedmont Triad region of North Carolina, the Kerner family and many others celebrated Christmas in the Moravian tradition. The Moravian Church, founded in Moravia, or present-day Czechia, was founded in the 15th century. The Moravian community later moved to Germany seeking more religious freedom. And in the 1720s, the church began sending missionaries to North America with the goal to settle utopian settlements in Pennsylvania and later in North Carolina, notably in the Wachovia tract of land, which today includes Bethania, Bethabara, Friedland, and Salem, or present-day Winston-Salem. Joseph Kerner, Jules' grandfather, immigrated from Germany to America in 1785. Although he was a practicing Catholic, he was drawn to the Friedland Moravian community because they were German-speaking, peaceful, and prosperous. Joseph and his family went on to adopt the Moravian faith and eventually founded the town of Kernersville. All right, here we see an image from Kernersville, Moravian. This is a love feast. And a note inscribed in the children's book, Candle Love Feast, to her granddaughter, Doree Kerner wrote that she wished her grandchildren could come with us to the Love Feast in the Moravian Church in Kernersville. That is where I have gone to Love Feast since I was a little girl like you. Likewise, in his 1912 diary, Jewel Gilmer, the younger, wrote that on Christmas evening, Mama, Papa, Milch, and I went to the Moravian Church, likely to a candle love feast, which included a modern version of the agape meals held in homes during the New Testament early Christian era, which includes a simple meal, traditionally a sweet bun and coffee, in the spirit of the birth of Jesus Christ. For most American Moravian churches, the service primarily involves an opening prayer, hymns, and food. During the service, the congregation lights homemade beeswax candles, symbolizing Jesus as the light of the world. All right, that about wraps up our history. And now we are on to some truly beautiful images of Kerner's Folly at Christmas. Right here we have the foyer mantelpiece from 2 years in a row. The Christmas program at Kerner's Folly is really awesome because most of the decorating is done by volunteers. It takes about 30 to 40 volunteers for us to put in place our Christmas program. There are 22 rooms in the house. We have a tree in every room, and each room gets adopted by a different volunteer decorator or community group. Each year we have a different theme to keep things fresh. We try to kind of move people around from room to room, so it's never the same visit twice. We start decorating on November 1st, and then we try to be ready by our opening day of holiday, which is always the day after Thanksgiving. So I'm going to take you on a little tour through Christmas, modern day Christmas at Kerner's Folly. We have the beautiful foyer. This is the elaborate mantelpiece in millwork that I spoke about earlier. It probably would not surprise viewers to know that there are 15 different fireplaces in the house, and they all have this really beautiful original American encaustic tile work. Jewel really wanted to present an entire catalog to his clients. We joke around and say that Kerner's Folly was really like the IKEA of the Victorian age. People could come in and choose one thing that they loved, or they could, take the whole room. So here we go past the foyer. We are in the breakfast room now. You can see in the photo on the left, that's actually an archway that is left over from the original carriageway. So if you can imagine a horse-drawn carriage pulling right through the center of your house, that's what living at Kerner's Folly was like before Polly Alice moved in. We try to keep our decorations Victorian themed, which is getting more and more difficult as, we keep changing decorators and vintage and antique items become fewer and further between. I thought this on the right was a great example. This is one of our decorators, Tim. He used Spanish moss and vintage antique teacups in his design for the breakfast room. Oh, the lovely breakfast room. This was Polly Alice's favorite room in the house. It was added on after the carriageway was closed in. This would have been like the end of the carriageway. And it was closed in and became the room that the family took most of their informal meals in. So over here to the right, there's a little pass-through window to the kitchen. It has 2 skylights, thought to be among the first in private homes in North Carolina. It was a beautiful room that Polly Alice really stuffed full of plants. There are some of you out there who may not know that Victorians were just as crazy about houseplants as we are today. Polly Alice would have had ivy, curtains in front of the windows, many ferns, lots of vases of flowers. And this design for the breakfast room by Connie Kerner, who was a previous executive director, just really hits that Victorian sweet spot, I think. All right, this is a view of the buffet in the dining room and is a great example of Joel Kerner's design for furnishings. So he really tended towards the heavy hand in design. The more beading and roping and egg and dart molding, the better. So this piece was designed by Joel. It was probably made locally. We have our best guess as somewhere around High Point, which was a major furniture manufacturing hub at the time. It probably arrived at the Folly in pieces, was assembled here in the dining room, and it is so large that it has never been moved. So we are really looking forward to the challenges of restoring this piece when it comes time. Here we see on buffet, which is actually 3 levels. We're missing one up above. This is a brother and sister team who have probably the biggest collection of nutcrackers I've ever seen in my life. That's the dining room. We have a couple images on the screen. On the left side, we see the other corner of the dining room with the beautiful tree and Santa Claus as well. You can see that archway of the carriageway. The center is looking down through the dining room to the breakfast room along what would have been that central carriageway with some very large nutcrackers standing tall. On the right, we have dining room from another year past, beautiful in the same spot. So while we try to switch it up as much as we can, there are some things that look similar, but to me, each tree each year is just absolutely stunning. Excuse me. Okay. All right. We are looking into the Rose Room. This is a room on the 2nd floor of the house, which is Doree's teenage bedroom. So after the children grew out of their tiny playrooms, which are about 5.5 feet in height. So if you come to visit and you're a very tall person, please do watch your head as you move through the playrooms. Joel painted this room pink for Doree's 16th birthday. And it is a beautiful example of his furnishing design as well as architectural design. Here we can see this beautiful sunburst grill, which marks all of the major rooms of the house. In our quest for Victorian decoration, we use a lot of garland, we use a lot of greenery. I think this one on the right was decorated by Anne Stubbe, and she is from England, and she is very adept at using a plaid and a tartan to brighten up for festive Christmas. Here we see, it's kind of a throwback photo. This is probably 2012 reception room. So it really is an exquisite room. It is the largest room on the second floor and is where a lot of the entertainment was held when guests would come to visit at Kerner's Folly. We have a 12-foot tree that fits in this room. And for some reason, I don't know why, this room rarely gets adopted by a volunteer. But it's our pleasure as a staff to pull together a vision and really, get that wow factor for Christmas for our visitors. There are some interesting pieces of furniture in here too. In the corner, this is actually a freestanding coat closet that Joel conceived of and designed for his party guests. Around the back, there is a shelf for gentlemen's top hats, lots of hooks for ladies' capes and cloaks and coats. And then around the front, there's a mirror for any last minute adjustments before you return to the party. These chairs over here were designed by Joel. This poof right here was designed by Joel. We also have several conversation chairs that we may get to see later. Kerner's Folly is extraordinarily lucky in that we have about 90% of Joel's original furnishings in the house. We are lucky that Joel designed on such a fabulous and grand scale that most of the pieces that are in the major rooms are simply too big to fit outside of the door. So that's the case for the reception room as well as many more. Here we see the reception room. I believe this is from 2019. And I think our theme that year was a Gilded Age Christmas. So we did kind of all gold everything. We had gold everywhere. You can also see in this image down here, these are some of the conversation chairs that Joel designed. This one is a 2-seater for courting couples who were not allowed to sit side by side on a piece of furniture, lest something inappropriate happen. And this one over here was for maybe more informally introduced couples and their chaperone. Yes, it is a 3-seater. So the chaperone could keep a very close watch on the conversation. In this photo, you can also see the ceiling frescoes and murals. They are not in the best shape. Kerner's Folly suffered extensive water damage during the period that it was not in use. And unfortunately, the shape of the house, it's got a very steep pitch and then flattens out on the second floor. So that's where most of our water damage. And of course, many of you may know, fluctuating temperature and humidity, not great for art. So that is our gorgeous reception room and reception room tree. Reception room from a different year. I think this was last year. We had the theme of Christmas carols last year. So each room focused on a different Christmas carol that was kind of the time period. And I believe our carol for the reception room was Morning Star, which is a traditional Moravian. And Moravian churches are typically really decked out in poinsettias and red decorations for the holidays. So we echoed that in our tree design. Another shot of the breakfast room, also from the caroling year. I believe this was Tim's year with the teacups, and his carol was Here We Come a Wassailing. So that was a really good one. Oh boy, this is an amazing image of the theater last year. And I believe their carol was Hark the Herald Angels Sing. And this is up in the 3rd floor of the home in Cupid's Park Theater. And this decoration was created by the Paul J. Senior Botanical Garden, also in Kernersville. And they always do an incredible job. They're really, aesthetically minded to begin with. And they have a really large crew. So they totally decked out our theater last year. We'll never, ever be able to top it ever again, but it was exquisite. This is a view from the top of the house in Cupid's Park Theater all the way down to the north entry. So it's 3 flights of stairs. Staff usually gets to decorate the north entry and stairway as well. I believe this was from our Gilded Age Christmas with traditional bows and garland. And of course, you can see our Christmas tree down below. This is the master bedroom. And I believe this is Angels We Have Heard on High was her carol that year. This was designed by Patty, and this is in our recently restored master bedroom. So you can see silk wallpaper was reinstalled. We returned it to its original paint scheme. And then, of course, we decorated for Christmas. I think my favorite part of this room is Patty is actually Dore's granddaughter. And each year she brings back not only Medora, the doll, but also the family's heirloom crazy quilt, which you can see on the bed. This is the smoking room. So this is one of my favorite rooms as well. It's got beautiful tile work, mostly because Jewel was extremely concerned with fire hazards, as I would be too if I built such an amazing house. So being that he worked in the tobacco industry and that many of his clients enjoyed tobacco, he did build a specialized smoking room for that activity. You can see the tile on the floor, and actually the tile goes all the way up to this extremely high chair rail. So if an ash kind of got out of line, it would quickly be put out. And actually the water pump and well is located right outside this window right here, just in case. This is from a few years back. We've got some beautiful carolers, some beautiful Christmas trees. I don't know who designed this room, but it was amazing. All right, in the reception room here on the left, I believe this is a photo from one of our favorite seasonal events, which is called Christmas by Candlelight. We hold it on the weekends in December, and we work with our community partner, Kernersville Little Theater. So they dress up in their Christmas Carol attire, and they do Christmas Carol all over the place on their front porch and in the reception room. They do an amazing job at kind of slipping into the role of hosts and hostesses, and just generally being very gracious and putting on their finest Victorian era show for us. So that's the left image. On the right side, we see an image from the South Guest Room. And this room is peculiar as well because it's about 5.5 feet high, the ceiling. And it was created from what used to be the lower hayloft when the horses were still living in the house. So along the right, you can see some of the only closets that are located in the entire house. The vanities on the left were built and designed by Jewel. We've got some close-ups of Santa over here on the left. Love doing some close-up of decorations. If it's Spanish moss, then Tim probably decorated that one. On the right side, we can see the other half of the South Guest Room, which is the bathing room. The house did not have indoor plumbing for a long while the family was living there. So they did have to heat water on the stove and bring it all the way upstairs for a bath. So probably not bathing that often. I do not remember who decorated this one, but I do remember that the bathtub was full of bubbles. I am throwing a lot at you right here. I apologize. I was afraid I was going to run out of time. All right, so up here, top left, we see the north entryway, one of our soldier nutcrackers standing guard. This room, top right, is the sewing room. So while the gentlemen maybe would retreat to the smoking room after dinner, the ladies would probably go to the sewing room where it was warm and cozy. Polly Alice was a member of the Needlework Guild and started her own sewing circle in Kernersville, so she could probably often be found in this sweet, cozy room. Our decorator, Tina, has even worked in some sewing elements into her decorations. Another interesting thing about this room is that it used to be the tack room for the stables. And I think that's why we have some unique architectural features, as well as a restored boot couch that you can see if you come by. Bottom left is in the children's playroom. We've got lots of original toys and stuffed animals in there. Even though the ceilings are low, it's definitely worth the peek. And I believe this bottom right image is from the garden's amazing theater decorations. They like to work in a lot of elements of the natural world, which you can see in the animals and the acorns. This is the foyer. I believe this was our caroling year, and carolers are definitely a frequent flyer at Christmas at Kerner's Folly. If you can see this piece of greenery right here, says in technical Christmas decorating terms called a swag, and it was very popular during Victorian times, and it is really fun to build and create your own for the holidays. Here is the theater from another viewpoint. Man, they really did it up. You can see we have a kind of proscenium stage that thrusts out in the center of the room. You can see some of the beautiful original murals that were painted by Caesar Milch. They were painted after some illustrations that Jewel did. So Caesar probably had some creative direction in all of the flourishes, but Jewel probably provided most of the direction. This is this year from the South Guest Room. Got some beautiful trees and a gingerbread house. The folks who decorated the kitchen this year have created an amazing miniature folly to look like gingerbread. It's actually cardboard since we can't have food in the Historic House Museum. This was decorated by Jeff and Ashley Wyke, and I don't know if he did this in an AutoCAD program or something, but it is 100% spot on. Amazing. These are images from the breakfast room this year. Our theme was a winter wonderland. And so this decorator, Carol Ashby, she used a lot of swans in her decorating, which we thought was absolutely fabulous. More behind the scenes from this year. Again, our theme, a winter wonderland. This is in the master bedroom, decorated by Connie Kerner, and she does very meticulous research on Victorian decorations. So we see the feather tree over here, garlands, icicles, gorgeous. And this is her mantle in the master bedroom. It's kind of, there are no words. So she used a really beautiful flocked garland. And then these things that are hanging down, I believe they are strands of beads with a crystal on the end. But another beautiful example of Jewel's millwork and ornamentation. And it's already pretty elaborate, but then we just really gild the lily this time of year. This is the theater this year. This was decorated by the Kiwanis Club of Kernersville. They did an amazing job, kind of picked an English Boxing Day sort of theme, lots of feathers and natural elements. They did an awesome job. This is also in the theater. This is an amazing little structure. You can see the decorations that are on top of the piano. We have some of the family's original instruments. They all played instruments. Jewel and Polly Alice believed that in order to be a well-rounded student, you needed to learn an instrument. So everyone in the family played, and when they would have productions for the community, this was the orchestra pit to the left of the stage. Out here on the left, you can see the view from Cupid's Park Theater and just a really neat shadow of Kerner's Folly. This is Main Street. This is our beautiful view. And on the right, this is from this year too. My mom actually decorated this one. She built a child-size gingerbread house and brought lots of nutcrackers and candy. And I think she did a pretty great job. This year for Winter Wonderland in the stairway, we've got snowflakes falling down all the way from the 3rd floor. And in the library, we have very many elves and very many reindeer. Before I move on from the library, I just want you to reflect on how beautiful it looks, because before it was a library, this room was actually the stable for the horses. So it's come a long way. This is on the big table in the reception room. We did a small Christmas village inside for this year's Winter Wonderland. And here she is, Let It Snow. This is the big tree this year in the reception room. We did garland with icicle lights. We did snowflakes. We did every size and type and kind of snowflake you could possibly imagine. And we had some really amazing help from the Social Studies Honor Society at East Forsyth High School. So they came and they taught themselves how to make paper snowflakes. They made several hundred of them. And then they helped us trim the tree right before we opened for Thanksgiving. So it was truly lovely. All right, I believe that is my last slide. Thank you guys so much for listening and watching. And if you have any questions, please let me know.
All right, we can begin with the questions. We'll just take them in order. Let me go back up here real quick. We have a series of questions from Ashley. She noticed that Kerner was spelled differently on the glass. Is there a reason for that?
Yes. So Kerner, it's confusing. So Kerner with the O and the umlaut was the original Kerner. When he came from Germany, he spelled his name in the traditional German way with the umlaut. When he arrived in America, we are not sure whether someone changed it for him or he thought it would be easier to change his name to Kerner. So when he arrived in North Carolina, he took over a crossroads. It was called Dobson's Crossroads. He renamed it Kerner's Crossroads. The town became Kernersville when it incorporated, but Jewel, because he was a little bit extra, as you may have noticed, decided to revert his last name back to Kerner with the O and the umlaut.
How many fireplaces do you have at Folly?
15. It's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. And how many servants did it take to maintain the whole place?
That is a really great question. So we know of one person who lived at the Folly. Her name was Clara Kerner. And her story is a really interesting and really complex one. She was born in 1820. She was born into enslavement. She was purchased so that she could remain in Kernersville by Jewel's parents when she was about 20 years old. Jewel's mother passed away when he was very young, and Clara raised him and was like a mother figure to him and his 5 siblings. When he built the Folly, he was a young bachelor. He did not know how to cook, clean, take care of himself. So Clara moved in and helped him. And eventually he built her a separate house out back once his house filled up with children and wife. And we guess that the Kerners had help from about 2 or 3 other people who did not live in the house, but who were Kernersville natives.
If most of the furniture pieces were too big to go out the door, does that mean they were brought in and built inside the house?
Yes, that's exactly what that means. Absolutely. So the buffet, the china cabinet, a lot of the furnishings in the reception room. Um, when they brought the piano into Cubits Park Theater, they had to cut a hole in the floor and use a pulley system. So yes, the doorways, all of them are tiny.
I guess referencing the view out the window, Marla asks if all the property belongs to the house property, or how big is the property in terms
That's
of
a great
acreage?
question. So the first to the first gravel driveway is Folly property. And then on the other side of the gravel driveway, it's actually owned by the town of Kernersville. And we are in the process of um, build fundraising for the building of a new visitor center that's going to occupy that further lot. And it's going to really vastly improve our facilities and our visitor experience. So we're really excited about that.
Ava says, can you comment about the later history of the family? What happened to the son, the daughter? Where did they end up?
Absolutely. So Doree stayed close by. She married a man named Drew Donnell from Oak Ridge, North Carolina. And then she moved to Oak Ridge, and she and Drew, or Lan, had several children, and they used the house as a summer home. So Jewel passed away in 1924, and Polly Alice passed away in 1934. So from 24 to 34, Doree and her family used the Folly mostly as a summer home, but it became too burdensome to continue to heat in the winter. And it gradually just kind of became way too much for the family to handle. Gilmer had served in the Naval Reserve, and then he went on to become a lawyer, and actually he became a judge, a tax judge, I think, of some kind in DC, and had a family there. So Gilmer was up in DC, and Doree couldn't really manage it by herself. And even though they both had children, the house fell into disrepair. And by 1950, it was in pretty rough shape. By about 1970, the town of Kernersville had determined that it was such a fire hazard that they actually had it slated for demolition. Fortunately, about 26 local families, including Kerner descendants, pooled their resources, came together, saved the house, purchased the house from their remaining family members, purchased it as it was with everything inside, and got it listed on the National Register of Historic Places. And then ever since then, it's been just a very slow march of restoration and preservation. So I hope that
Close call, it seems like.
Yes, that's right.
Are you open every Christmas season? And what about the other, major holidays year?
Yes, we are open every Christmas season. It is our busiest season, but we have extended hours. We have special events. So we have a different theme every year. So if you come to Kerner's Folly, you can make it a holiday tradition. If you come back every year, it will always be different. But we are open year round. We're usually open Tuesday through Saturday. In December, we're also open on Sunday. We're closed Christmas Eve, closed Christmas Day, closed New Year's Day. Our last day of Christmas is December 31st. But for the rest of the year, we have really awesome adult engagement program called the Victorian Parlor Series. We've done Victorian cocktails. We've done Victorian herbs and flowers. We've done historical botany. We've done a Halloween mystery masquerade, which was really fun. So we have lots of opportunities for learning and enjoyment, but mostly we do self-guided tours. So the whole house, all 22 rooms, is open to visitors. There's nothing that's roped off, and you really just go at your own pace, guided by storyboards in each room that tell you about the room that you're in and then where to go to next.
And our last question is, at what point was the carriageway and stable closed in?
Okay, I should know that date. Oh, I want to say right after Jewel and Polly Alice got married. So the funny story is that Jewel proposed to her and they were going to get married, and he thought he was going to build her a house. But she said, I want that one instead. I want the Folly. I want to live there. It's such an amazing place, but we have to do something about these horses. So at the same time that the horses were moved to a stable across the street, the carriageway was closed in. So I want to say that's probably by 1890 at the latest, is my best guess, but I should know that. Thank you for asking. I'm going to look it up.
Well, thank you for your questions, everyone. I'm going to hand it back to Stacy for now.
Thank you, Bobby. And thank you, Susanna, so much for this wonderful, special behind the scenes look at all the wonderful ways that Kerner's Folly celebrates the holiday season. I'm so glad I asked you about this because I've been mispronouncing it forever. So I'm really glad that you told me how to pronounce it.
You know, there's so many ways to see and pronounce Kerner that we don't take it personally, but thank you so much for having me. I had an awesome time, and thank you for that link for the Victorian Parlor series. We have had some really awesome programs, so we'd love to see some of your folks down in Kernersville.
Absolutely. And thank you guys to all those of you who joined us this evening. I would also like to take a moment to say a special thank you to our adult programs intern, Bobby, who has worked with us this semester. This is his last program with us. So we just want to say thank you so much for all of your hard work, Bobby. It's been awesome having you with us.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it all.
Guys, this is our last History and Highballs for the year. So we hope that we'll see you at our first History and Highballs of the new year, dressing the Abbey heirloom jewelry, happening Thursday, January 6th at 7 p.m. In the meantime, all of us at the museum wish you all a happy, healthy, and safe holiday season, and we will see you next year. Take care, everybody.
Cheers.
Bye. Cheers.